For this class, I think our water, in the David Foster Wallace sense, is our modern political history and the current macro and micro environments that people live in. One way to take the macro view of this environment is a modern map. I'm sure you've seen them a million times. My dad was a historian. Before he became a historian, he was a cartographer, and I grew up around historical maps. Um, I learned, I think, by osmosis and just by repeated exposure, that the maps that we were seeing at first glance have a lot of other um, decisions underneath the surface that go into them. They're a result of conscious decisions about what to include and what to exclude, kind of like your research essays, right? You have a certain number of words, a canvas to paint with, and you have to decide what to include and what to leave in. Um, what matters and what can be left out. Often, what is left out is as important as what you actually include. In essence, then, maps are visual representations of the type of decisions we face when trying to do research, right? The water. Right? So let's take a look at this modern map of the world. Even within my lifespan, the map has changed in a couple of different ways. Uh, South Sudan has split off from North Sudan. Um, Timor Leste has become independent and separated from Indonesia. When you look at these kind of maps, right, what my eye is drawn to, and yours as well, might be the borders, where one group ends and another begins, right? These borders and these modern nation states are a result of centuries of wars, centuries of conflict, um, economic evolution, democratic evolution, right? Exploration, migration. These maps are a product of the environment and the peoples who lived within them, right? So this is the a snapshot of a map that has meaning that we give it, what we value, the where nation states are, and where they stop. If you take a step back and just look at the geographical factors of the Earth, this amazing shot by NASA, stitching together thousands of photos to get rid of all the clouds in the fall a couple decades ago, 2004, right? All clouds have been removed. It's fall in the northern hemisphere, so you can see snow across the Arctic, which we're going to look at. There's no, there are a few natural barriers, so the Himalayas, the Sahel, but by and large, you don't see those kind of fault lines or political borders in by just looking at the geographic features. Um, and I think one of the more amazing things when you kind of step back and try to recognize the water for what it is how much we're standing on centuries of science and curiosity and examination to be able to give us the technological skills to send satellites into space, to be able to have the computer power to stitch all these photos together to give that kind of snapshot of the world and the understanding. Um, and you can draw maps upon this kind of natural world, looking at a whole bunch of different factors. Certain factors would be more important to you, certain ones less so. But we're going to be imposing upon this physical space political, economic, and conflict maps upon it. For example, look at the Human Development Index. This is a map of the world looking at different levels of human development. More developed states, highly developed states in green, low human development in red, right? We're going to be looking at a whole bunch of these different kind of maps that impose differentiation amongst those political states that we saw in that first political map. This map is from the Human Development Index. We're going to be coming back and understand how that individual index is created later on in the semester, and how these factors that we look at in this class often cluster in space. So you look at the Human Development Index, you see clusters of red in sub-Saharan Africa, orange in South and Southeast Asia, green in Europe, and then you look at other maps, you see regional similarities. This is the Fragile State Index for 2020, and you see states in red, again in sub-Saharan Africa, some in Southeast Asia. This map is trying to capture something different. It used to be called the Failed State Index. This captures countries' risk at to political instability given certain changes. Notice, where the stable and unstable areas are often quite similar between this and human development. Any differences you could also take a look at to kind of see states that might have low levels of development but relative high stability. Maps are a snapshot in time, right? That Fragile State Index map was a snapshot in time. However, a lot of these maps that we look at, you have to kind of think how these things can change over time. This is a plot of the states that have improved and reduced their fragility and increased their fragility. You can see the countries that have improved and those that worsened. I think we're going to come up with a lot of different maps over the course of this class. For me, in trying to draw a theoretical map for this class, I start with that background, beautiful NASA global map. I can't draw, so I drew a circle. That's the physical environment in which we all live in. Impose upon that the human environment. Human Development Index is one proxy for that, and then within that is violent conflict that exists both within the human environment and the physical environment. Yeah, it's simple, but I'm trying to abstract away to the generalities, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty soon enough. And so this map I'm really proud of. I've been trying to get into spatial analysis, and I created this map in QGIS. We're starting with a blank slate, a blank map. We're going to be able to draw our own theoretical maps onto this over the course of the semester. And we all have different levels of knowledge about the subject matter we're going to be covered in this class. And some of the things I'm going to be talking about you will have already seen before. Some of you might not have seen it before, so we're trying to make sure that we all are filling this in together. Some of us might have already started drawing, but some might be coming tabula rasa, which is great. We're all going to be going and at different speeds, but we're going in the same direction. So in filling this map, I think we're going to be focusing on two main questions, right? How do environmental factors shape human security? Human security we're going to be defining next week, as well as environmental factors, and what are the direct and indirect means by which environmental factors affect political conflict, civil wars, interstate wars, interpersonal, smaller scale conflicts. I can get that out. So in plotting these relationships, you can do it in a whole bunch of different ways. I'm trying to show you a couple of different ways to see what resonates different people. It'll resonate with different people. They're different types of learners. But what you can see is there are these direct effects, environmental factors to human security and conflict. In those two different steps, there's also that direct effect between environmental factors and conflict we're going to be looking at. But you can draw arrows in a bunch of different ways. Conflict decreases human security. It also has dramatic environmental effects, as that visual from the first Iraq War hopefully made clear. And you can think about the outcomes that we're looking at in this class according to direct parts of the puzzle. You don't have to cover it all, right? But we're looking at a lot of different relationships, and in your research, you can focus on one of these in more detail. So let's start by defining each one of these things in a bit more detail. We're going to be doing it a lot more a bit later on. So the environment includes geographic features, the kinds that would show on that NASA map, extractable and useful natural resources like the coltan that was in that Congolese mine that goes into our cell phones, climate events like tsunamis that can end up leading to devastation as well as have an effect on conflicts, as we saw in Aceh, and changes, right? We're going to be looking both at levels and change. The availability of resources and the spike in their availability has different effects. Human security, a quote from one of the readings today, the condition which people and communities have the capacity to manage stress to their needs, rights, and values. We're going to be getting into more detail about that, but I thought that was a good overall definition. And conflict, my area of expertise, which you have to kind of define conflict in terms of observed violence. Not quoting from Small and Singer, one of the early quantitative studies of conflict. Not only is war impossible without violence, except in the metaphorical sense, but we consider the taking of human life as the primary and dominant characteristic of war. It's what makes it the ultimate importance and relevance to a lot of the different topics we're going to be covering. To decide what it is, you have to draw definitional boundaries around what you're looking at compared to everything else. Those boundaries are always fuzzy, and people create boundaries that might make sense in one context and not in others. We can always have a debate about them. And what we're going to be looking at later is that there has to be some kind of threshold of battle-related fatalities to be considered a conflict, as well as who are the people that are actually fighting. Those, I think, are three very general summaries of the topics we're going to be covering in this class, and we'll be looking at the different ways that they've intersected, are intersecting, and may intersect in the future.